So now the icing on the cake today, we now have an unusual political candidate for the 33rd district, the most contested congressional district in the history of politics in this country ever. There was 21 candidates, now they're down to 16, still a record. But Marianne Williamson threw in her hat in the ring before Henry Waxman retired, or announced his retirement. And that's when I decided to support her, because I was already acquainted with her political views. She's definitely on the same page than we are. And now we have the most contested political campaign ever in Los Angeles. And we have the one candidate that I think can make a huge difference in DC. So, without any further, here's Marianne.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Al, and thank you, Alan. More than I can tell you. I think that this is a very decisive moment for the progressive community. I am a lifelong Democrat. I've been a lifelong Democrat. And there was a time where being a progressive and being a Democrat, I mean, it was almost like the same thing. And today, people like Alan Grayson exist. He has endorsed my candidacy. Keith Ellison, co-chair of the Progressive Caucus in the House, has endorsed my candidacy. Dennis Kucinich has endorsed my candidacy. Americans for Democratic Action here in LA has endorsed my candidacy. And yet, as you know, I'm running as an independent. And one of the reasons I'm so grateful to Alan, in addition, the general, of course, benefit of his endorsement, the extraordinary gift of his coming out here. This is the third event he has done, showing his support, being so gracious and so enthusiastic for my campaign, but also my knowing that this is not necessarily an easy thing for someone within the Democratic Party to do. So the fact that he would go out on the limb for me like that, as you can imagine, means so much to me. Why did I myself do it? Why did I myself feel in this district that it was time for a progressive to make a stance that was not a perpetuation of the Democratic machine here in California? It is because I feel here in California that progressives have a codependent relationship with the Democratic Party, where the Democrats come to us every time there's an election and ignore us till the next one. And Alan Grayson is one of the few people within the Democratic Party, I don't know if one of a few people, but he's one of the people within the Democratic Party who I so admire because he continuously resists the corporate tide, the corporatist tide. And I feel that in order for progressives to really hold a space that is robust, we must not toe the line with a corporatist direction. We must not toe the line with a militarist direction. If you sleep too long with someone who has no spine, you begin to lose your own. So when you see someone like Alan, who stands within the party for such a progressive vision, that's fantastic. And if I win this election, if I have the honor and the privilege of winning this election, I will certainly caucus with the Democrats. And I think my votes, much like Bernie Sanders' votes, will be the votes of an independent. It seemed to many of us more like a Democrat voting than many Democrats do today. I've been particularly grateful to Al, because as Al said, he supported my candidacy early. He supported my candidacy at a point where all I got from most people was just this kind of almost automatic dismissal. And it took a while for me to make the claim and be able to make it in a way that actually penetrated the ethers, that I'm actually the progressive in this race. And I feel that I'm the progressive in this race because I feel that I'm not only, with my conversation, addressing the effects of the problem, I'm naming the cause. I'm not only addressing the symptoms of America's dis-ease, I'm naming the disease. If you look at me and let's say Ted Lieu, I would think, on the vast majority of issues, I'm sure we would vote the same way. But there's more to a real progressivism in America than only how you vote. Is that correct, Alan?
Yep.
There has to be a larger conversation. A conversation that has been diminished And it takes a forceful personality like Alan Grayson to continue to have the conversation while in the middle of this maelstrom that has taken over both major political parties. I feel that we must have an allegiance that is first and foremost to our country and to a progressive vision. I feel that the deeper disease, which has to do with more than just treating the symptoms, is namely the fact that we have become in our country a legalized system of bribery and corruption. We have. This is not something that we can just pretend isn't quite as bad as it is. If you go to the doctor and the doctor gets some bad test results, the doctor has the legal and ethical responsibility to tell you that. You have to be able to know what your disease is before you can figure out what medicine to take. You have to name your problem in life before you can claim a solution. So I don't feel that this is time to perpetuate the political status quo. And progressives of all people should not be perpetuating a political status quo if the political status quo is moving in a corporatist direction. Or what does it mean to be a progressive? This is not the time to perpetuate the political status quo. This is the time, I believe, to disrupt the political status quo. Because I believe that our vision should be for democracy itself. And I believe that we're living at a time where American democracy is dying a death by 1,000 cuts. We have transitioned in our time from Lincoln's articulation of a government of the people and by the people and for the people. And he spoke these words at the Battle of Gettysburg battlefield where tens of thousands of men had died, what we can only assume to have been the most horrific deaths. He said that they had not died in vain, that they had died so that a government of the people, by the people, and for the people would not perish from the earth. And I'm running for Congress, and I ask your support because I believe government of the people, by the people, and for the people is perishing. We have become a government of a few of the people, for a few of the people, and by a few of the people. This has happened systematically. It did not happen mysteriously. Over the last few decades, through banking policies, through trade policies, and through tax policies, we have siphoned off major portions of the material wealth of our country and placed that wealth in the hands of a very few of our citizens, dismantling the basic foundations of democracy as I understand it. I read a book called Gardens of Democracy that said just as blood has to circulate in the body in order for the body to be healthy, opportunity has to circulate in the society in order for the society to be healthy. And yet today, there is a lockout. The average citizen is locked out. The average citizen is locked out of what I believe every American should experience as a minimum amount of political influence. Why? Because of the money. The average American is more and more locked out of what I believe every American should feel entitled to in terms of educational opportunity. Why? Because of the lockout. Not only the fact that we should have universal access to preschool, because number one, it is the single greatest poverty alleviator in our country. Not only because these children who start preschool, start kindergarten, not having gone to preschool or not having received proper brain stimulation from parents or mentors, are behind on day one of kindergarten. If we do not catch them up within 2 years, they are then on a 50% probability track to incarceration. If we do not catch them up with their reading by the 4th grade, they are then in a position where we can start building the prison beds. And when these people say, oh, these kids ought to stay in school, you tell me, if you're in the 7th grade and the teacher says out your textbook, take out your text, and the kid to your left can write, to your right can read, and the child to your left can read, and you can't, would you come back the next day? Then we have college students in America coming out of college with an average of $30,000 in student loan debt. This now exceeds credit card debt in the United States of America. Now think about that. You want to stimulate your economy? Think, if this is more debt than our credit card debt, think how much money is not being put into the economy because these young people have no money to spend.
They are so saddled by these debts. Number one, they can't be real consumers, therefore they can't be stimulating the economy. And number two, even if they work hard, they don't have $2,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 that they can invest in themselves in their own startup. I find it very paternalistic. Both major political parties. The way they talk about our young people getting out of college, we want to have a job waiting for them. To me, that's saying, I want you to go work for the man. The way I see it, you give the American young person the education that each of us should feel entitled to from the time we're in early childhood all the way through college. Tell these kids who have paid in good faith for 10 years, forgive those loans. To the next ones you say, and I will talk to Alan about this if I have the honor of being your congressman, I'll say, what do you think, Alan? Because how about 1 year of public service? You give your country 1 year. Military could be one of many options, and I say in exchange for that, you go have 4 years of your tuition paid. You also get the greatest publicly funded matrix of technical schools in this country. And what I say, these kids get out of college, hell no, they don't have to just go find a good job. Let them be job creators. That's how we form a great, robust economy. Let more people in. That's how I see it. There are so many issues now by which this access that's denied, and it's getting to the point where it's creeping up on all of us. With the National Defense Authorization Act, this government giving itself legalized authority to indefinitely detain U.S. citizens. With the spying, with the NSA spying that Alan Grayson's, he's on it. But we have the drones coming, ladies and gentlemen. Can we wake up in this country? I don't think the average American is aware of the technological capacity of these drones. That capacity is to know your login details, who you slept with last night, and who just walked into the room. Now I know that the government has told us not to worry about our privacy because these drones have to adhere to all local privacy laws, state privacy laws, and federal privacy laws, which maybe makes you feel okay for about 30 seconds till you remember that that's the same government that was recently busted with the NSA cell phone spying. And one of the things that I've been saying all over this district, and what's been really exciting to me, because I feel there's a listening here, I pointed out to people from Malibu down to Palos Verdes, Agoura Hills, Topanga, Calabasas, all the way over Beverly Hills and beyond. I have said the characterological facet of the American people is such that as individuals we would not take this. The American individual, the personality of the American, you try to steal my stuff, I say, excuse me. The personality of the average American, you try to pull the wool over my eyes and say, excuse me. The personality of the average American, you try to manipulate me, excuse me. So why are we taking it as a nation? Why are we in groupthink as a nation? Why are we in Stepford citizenship as a nation? Why are we acquiescing as a nation in ways that we would never do as individuals? That is how I see it now. And so from a constitutional amendment to outlaw the undue influence of money on our politics, which, oh, the system's real big on saying, oh, that'll take too long. Really? Really? Well, I'll tell you something. In 1976, we put the voting age from 21 to 18. It took a little over 3.5 months. And that's so the way the system acts. The system would say it would take so long. Where would we be today if the abolitionists had said, oh, it'll just take too long. Let's not even try. What can we do? Where would we be today if the suffragettes had said, oh, it'll take too long. What can we do? The way I see it, ladies and gentlemen, there's a big story here. You know, they say that the devil's in the details. The devil's not in the details. The devil's in the big picture. And this is the big picture as I see it. This country was founded in a dichotomy between the most profound, enlightened principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It was a repudiation of an aristocratic system where a small group of people, the king, the queen, their cronies, the aristocracy, the social system deemed them entitled to the land, entitled to the gold, entitled to the resources. And they could do whatever they wanted, and the entire political system was a container for that worldview. and they could do whatever they wanted. They feasted on the resources of the country, and then whatever crumbs were left, fell off their table after they had feasted. Everybody else in the country was reduced basically to an economic serf. And that economic serf just had to do everything he or she could possibly do to struggle to get enough crumbs to be able to survive and feed their children. But this country was founded in repudiation. This country said, no, it's not a divine right of kings where God's given power to the king, meaning the king then has power over everybody else, so that everybody else is so limited in their capacity to be what they want to be and do what they want to do and self-actualize in their lifetime. The shift into the founding of this country was not just a radical movement politically, it was a radical movement philosophically. Because here it was thought that God gave power to everyone. God gave power to everyone equally. And our political system would express that. Equality of rights, equality of opportunities, equality before the law, equality of rights to speech, equality of access to education, equality of ability to speak our minds. But there was a glitch, we know that. And that's how many of the people who not only embraced that philosophy and risked their lives to encode it in our documents were themselves slave owners. You can't have a bigger gap between equality of opportunity and slavery, the ability of one man to own another. But that's where the story begins. That's not where it ends. We had slavery, but then a generation rose up, and with the abolitionist movement combined with the Civil War, abolished slavery. Then women had no right to vote, women had no right to own property, they were second-class citizens, but that was where it began, it's not where it ended. A generation woke up, and with the suffragette movement, paved the way for the 19th Amendment to give women suffrage. Then well into the 20th century, we had institutionalized racism, we had Jim Crow laws, we had legalized segregation in the United States, but a generation rose up. And with Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement paved the way for civil rights legislation to end legalized segregation. So this is not the first time, ladies and gentlemen, where we've had a huge gap between who we say we are and how we're actually behaving. There's a big gap today, and it's our generation's turn. We repudiated an aristocratic situation 200 years ago, and it's time to repudiate it again. Let's not be the first generation of Americans to whip out on the moral responsibility that makes each and every generation a steward of American democracy. That's why I am running for Congress. I am running for Congress because I believe that we need to do a little more than fix it here and fix it there. We need to do more than to treat the effects of our problems today. We need to treat the cause. We need to do more than just treat the symptoms. We need to name the disease. And the only thing that can heal this disease is the only thing that has ever healed it, and that's the American people ourselves. From the abolitionist movement to the suffragette movement to the civil rights movement. This is not because any institution stood up. It was never because the status quo stood up. The status quo, by definition, is already happy with things the way they are. It was because the American people stood up and said, hell no. And I think we need to say hell no right now. Thank you very much.